And if you had a lower voltage line trying to run through, you'd have to run a lot higher current through it, right?
Yep.
In order to get the same power through it. And voltage, does it make any magnetic field? Just voltage? So, but current does, right?
That's my understanding.
So when you put up these large lines, people look at them and think, man, that's really must be a big source of magnetic field. In reality, it could be that just simply lower lines closer running through the neighborhoods could actually generate more magnetic fields than these high voltage lines. Actually, I borrowed one of these Gauss meters. They measure the EMF, and I drove all over Clark County the other night, sticking it on my window and measuring. And what I found is that electromagnetic fields are everywhere. Just simply going up and down some of the streets here, they vary from 4 to 10 to 12 milligauss in this area. It was interesting to me because I haven't really looked at the strength of magnetic fields for some time, and so I didn't realize I had to ask one of the engineers here, what is the strength of the Earth's magnetic field? And it varies from 300 to 600 milligauss, Gauss being the unit of magnetic strength. And this area is about 450 milligauss. Well, we have transmission lines that run right up close to our building here. So I took this guy out there and I measured it, and it's about 40 or so milligauss, which is about 10% of the strength of the Earth's magnetic field, right underneath the lines. And I've looked all over the place, where can I get the strongest magnetic field? And I really couldn't get from transmission lines anything that would be anywhere close to the Earth's magnetic field. So these fields, even though they look massive, even though they look very foreboding, they're small compared to the Earth's magnetic field, which is ever present. And that to me was offer some assurance that, hey, we're not talking about these things that just make it look small.
Yeah, it's a complex issue, and neither Doug and I nor I are experts at it. That's why we've hired experts to help put together a summary in the draft EIS, and it will show the average and the maximum magnetic field strength for any part of the line of all the segments that are proposed, and it varies depending on where it's built and whether it's near an existing line or not. So, and as I said before, we can position the conductors and lines such that if we're building next to an existing line, we can actually design it such that it partially or totally cancels out the magnetic field strength from the new line. So for when people are concerned about their health and the magnetic field strengths, in that document, they'll be able to look at a chart or a graph of where they live and see what the change in magnetic field strength proposed is. So along with that discussion of, what does your electric blanket do to you, and what does a microwave create as far as magnetic fields and so on. So we're not here to tell people how to think. We're here to provide all the information we can to them so they can reach their own conclusion.
Yeah, let them decide.
And Mark did hit on a very important subject, when we talk about safe distances. He did talk about the distance of the right-of-way and where the line's placed on it. Typically 150 feet wide with the line in the middle, giving you anywhere from 55 to 70 feet of clearance, depending on where you are on the edge of the right-of-way or where your property may be. When we talk about safe distances, we're talking about the electric fields. We're talking about the same effect of you walking up and jabbing a pin into a light socket. Because if a tree or a structure or somebody gets too close to one of those
you don't want any arc in
uninsulated lines, we know that an electrical shock can severely injure or kill you. But again, like he said, nobody in the electrical industry, nobody in the health industry, nobody, the World Health Organization, the National Institutes of Health has said there's tangible evidence that magnetic fields are harmful, but because there is some evidence that suggests there's a possible link, there are some low cost and other measures that you probably should take just in case. And because of the just in case scenario, like Mark said, we do review the current literature. We do have third-party experts actually collecting all of those studies that have been done since the last time we would have built a line to collect that information and find out if there's new information out there that suggests there's not or there is, or if we're still in that kind of inconclusive area we've been in since, quite frankly, the 1990s, 1980s, when this first became an issue.
Yeah, there have been so many studies that have been done on this, and the World Health Organization, National Cancer Society, these well-respected organizations whose job is to make sure that people's risks are minimized, they find no connection between the occurrence of cancer and EMF. And what I've been able to discover, you can correct me, is that there seems to be some connection between a slight increase in childhood leukemia, but they can't find a mechanism there, and they can't find a causal effect kind of a connection there.
Can't find the causal link.
So just a couple other benchmarks. I took this guy and put it on a heating pad. Well, you wrap a heating pad around your arm or your leg, and the strength of those magnetic fields ended up being 40-some in the one I tested, and it's about the same as standing directly underneath one of these transmission lines. And people they sleep under electric blankets. They buy these magnets and they wear them on their wrists and think, that makes me feel better. So we've got really a mix of people's perception about magnetism, which is what we're talking about here. And that's where, just to make sure that we err on the side of safety, and that's where prudent avoidance comes in. That's the term that you guys just make sure you don't unnecessarily put people in any, why expose them to it any more than necessary. Mm-hmm. So the thing that here we have opposition is putting these transmission lines through populated areas. Rather in areas where there's just simply nature, trees, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's not, you quickly realize it's not just EMF. If we could prove tomorrow that EMF definitely is not a problem, most people, we understand, would still not want a transmission line in their backyard. Right. So there's other issues. There's visual, there's noise, there's property values, there's the fact that we have to clear trees to construct them. So we're looking at all those things and seeing what we can do to minimize them.
Yep. So you've got multiple routes to consider, and you have a website that shows those potential routes. In some of those routes, you already have existing right-of-ways or easements, and other ones you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct.
And what's the process of how do you select those routes? If people go to your website and they see lines drawn on a map, are there other routes that they think, well, maybe there might be some other things that is not shown on the map? Are all the lines that are being considered shown on the map?
One thing, yep, and we continue to use the plural lines. While there are numerous lines on the map that we have, we want folks to understand, because there's a common misconception among folks that live in Clark County, that we would build, if we chose to build the line at the end of this process and everything penciled out and we still need it, and it's absolutely a foregone conclusion we have to do it at the end, there will be one alternative selected from this range of alternatives that we show on the map. We would not actually put 500 kV lines on every segment that's pieced together to make these alternatives. And some people actually think that would be the case, but what Mark's team's doing right now is they're in the field looking at survey data, they're combing over all the information that's been gathered since we introduced this project to the public in fall 2009, so that they can ultimately compare these segments against one another, look at all the impacts on those segments, and select the one best alternative at the end of this process. And that's why public participation is so important, because we need the public's help in gathering all the information that's out there about wetlands.
So you welcome the public's input.
Absolutely.
You welcome the public to speak up and say what they want, what they don't want.
And we've used that, and that's how we got the map we have. We've gone through several iterations on the map trying to find ways to route a new transmission line from Castle Rock to Troutdale and minimize impacts. So we've used our expertise in trying to select routes based on some really great input from the public. We've revised the map a couple times, and what you see there is that combined effort of trying to consider a reasonable set of options that give you some clear choices. One, again, is picking a route that's mostly on existing right-of-way, something we're really considering. The other is picking something farther to the east that's in less populated areas, that costs more, that has other impacts, but avoids more homes. So, you know, what we have in front of us now is a map that was finalized in November of 2010, and that's what we're taking forward, and we're studying those segments and those routes in the draft EIS. Although we continue to learn more and we continue to get input from the public, and hold the right to make changes in the future. But right now the plan is that we've gone through nearly a 2-year process, have a really good map with some good options on it. That's what we're taking forward.
You use the term EIS, that's Draft Environmental Impact Statement. And the environmental there is not just talking about the environment of trees and critters out there. The environment includes people.
Absolutely.
And servicing people and making sure that the people are benefited and the people are not negatively impacted. Do whatever you can to minimize that negative impact. So when people hear the environment, they think, oh, well, that doesn't include me. It does include us. That's why you're involved with this process. You've been 2 years into it so far, and you got, what, 3 more years to go in order to sort this out?
Let me give you the schedule briefly. Right now we're scheduled to come out with a draft environmental impact statement late this year, and that will be shared with the public. And we'll get comments. Hopefully we've covered most of the things people have asked us to, but I'm sure there will be areas that people will think we have not adequately covered. So then we'll take comments we receive from the public, go back into the document, gather additional information, and cover all those things and answer all those questions that people still feel we have not answered. And then we're scheduled at the end of 2012 to provide a final environmental impact statement to the public and to our administrator. And our administrator is scheduled to make a decision in January of 2013 as to whether to proceed with construction or not.
So between now and some point in the future, the multiple options, even things that are not necessarily lines drawn on the map, it is up in the air. In other words, even if there are lines drawn on the map now, there may be an additional route that might be worked out between the public and BPA that could find a different route, and this is the time period to do that? Is that right?
Well, that's always an option. Again, we feel really confident of the process we've been through so far, and we feel really confident that the map we have gives us a reasonable set of choices all the way from existing right-of-way to new right-of-way, to the point where we're getting so far out there, the cost and the impacts to other resources are so great, it's really pushing the limit on our ability to pick something that far east. But we do think we have those range of choices, okay, and some options in between. So our goal is, as we put this document together and learn about the impacts and the things that people wanted us to consider, that in the coming months a preferred route will float to the surface, that the project team will be able to make a recommendation to the administrator on a preferred route. So ideally, if things go as we hope, by the draft EIS late this year, in that will be a preferred alternative.
And the total cost for this project is what?
Right now it's estimated at $342 million.
$342 million, and that includes the construction, any land costs. That's the budget that's set aside for this.
Well, yeah, it's not the budget. It's the estimate that we did the financial analysis on, okay, to help us decide whether to build or not. One of the things we'll consider as we look at one route versus another is the cost. That's important to us.
$1/3 billion is estimated.
That's important to ratepayers, so there'll be different costs depending on what alternative we pick. That will be part of the decision process also.
And I would think, just simply looking at it from a cost point of view, if BPA already has existing easements, that you can just simply say, I don't have to add the cost of the land, we already have the land, that would be your lowest cost solution, is that right?
That's likely the case, yes.
Okay, and in the case where you have to buy new land, new route, because you need to be able to get away from some populated areas and there's just too much opposition there, then you have to add the cost of all of that real estate.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, David. That's a great point, because what you have in this process, a lot of times, a lot of the meetings I've been at, a lot of the people I've talked to over the last 2 years, you have folks in one area that'll tell you, well, you know it's going to cost you less. You've got the land to the west. You've got existing lines there. Why are you even having this process? Why don't you just put a line next to the one you currently have and just end the process now? Mm-hmm. And then you'll be in certain meetings and you'll have people say, well, there are a lot more people that live on the western side of Cowlitz County and Clark County, and then